Ladies and gentlemen from the flight deck, Captain speaking. Welcome aboard Freighter Flight 123, service San Bernardino to Honolulu. We're expecting fair weather for the entire flight. We may encounter a little bit of rough air descending into Honolulu. We'll keep you up to date as we travel along, and I will be narrating this flight as we move along. Currently now in the pushback phase. The white pickup truck you see on the left-hand side of the screen there is our mechanics. We have a staff of mechanics that meet every flight, check the airplane out, make sure that any maintenance issues are taken care of and that there's no difficulty with starting our engines or getting our systems online. The young lady you see walking along the yellow line there is our loadmaster. She made certain that all the weights and balance is secure on the plane and in the right place to keep us within our safe flight envelope. This particular loadmaster, she's in training to be airframe and power plant mechanic. She's looking to upgrade her career. Sharp lady. Here's our mechanics following us out. At this point, the tug is up under the nose of the airplane. We can't even see it. We're in communication with the pushback crew via headset and interphone. And they can hear my first officer and I's conversations and as we're running checklists. We get pushed back and kind of clear of the loading area there. They're telling us we can start our engine. And this is the phase of the flight that most passengers start reaching up on a passenger plane for the gasper air vent overhead, because the air conditioning shuts off and all the air quits moving in the cabin. Those air conditioner units on the airplane, on most aircraft, are powered by pneumatic pressure that's generated by the auxiliary power unit or the engines when they're running. And right now our auxiliary power unit's running and providing that pressure. We shut that off for the air conditioners and route all that high pressure air into the engine starter to get our big engines turning. And the procedure takes a couple minutes per engine to get them spun up and running stable. We're setting our brakes at this point and starting the other engine. Our mechanics are off the screen to the left, making sure that nothing bad occurs with the start. Starting a jet engine can be spectacular sometimes. Things can get a little bit out of hand and maybe you get a fuel leak. Sometimes they'll belch a little bit of fire out of the tailpipe, and it looks really spectacular when that happens. Or maybe we have a heavy wind coming from our tail, turning the engines backwards, and it takes a while to overcome that airflow, and makes it for a more difficult start. Here's our tow vehicle pulling away. This particular operator has all new ground equipment, and that is a very nice tug. It actually encompasses the nose gear on the airplane and grasps it and lifts that nose gear up off the ground. It's not just a tow bar. And there, right in front of us at our 12 o'clock, is our marshaller. The crossed wands indicate that they want us to have our brakes set and to be stationary. There's our mechanics coming across there, looking the airplane over to make sure both engines are turning properly and not leaking out a lot of fluids. There's, as I said, fuel and also hydraulic fluid that runs through those engine pylons, and a lot of high pressure air. They're doing a visual inspection to make sure everything looks good from their perspective and they're not seeing anything leaking out of our engines, or both engines are turning normally. Right now the ground person there's let me know that everything is clear of the aircraft. The engines are enormous vacuum sources and can pull personnel in. There's people wandering around the aircraft there, and if we happen to move and they got in front of one of the engines, they could get pulled in, and the results would be catastrophic. We flashed our landing lights at that person. She's waving us off, telling us that we're clear to taxi. We're talking to air traffic control, the ground controllers, to let them know that we'll be moving, and they're giving us clearance to move along the taxiways. Most taxiways are one-way thoroughfares, and you don't want to end up with two big airplanes nose to nose out on a taxiway and end up stuck out there. So the air traffic control, in this case on the ground, is monitoring all the aircraft movement on the ground and coordinating all those movements, making sure that our taxiways are clear. This particular airport's kind of interesting. No regular passenger traffic in or out of this airport. Mostly freighters in and out of here. General aviation. There's a lot of business jets in and out of here. A lot of airplanes come here. Their last flight coming in here, and then they're salvaged. All those airplanes out at our 12 o'clock there in front of us are being, all the parts removed off of them, engines, all the avionics, and they're being scrapped for parts. Also, there's a lot of fire tankers that firefighter aircraft that are in and out of here, a lot of police helicopter aircraft. These two tails on the left-hand side are DC-10s or L-1011 former passenger aircraft, and they've been retrofitted as fire tankers. They're pretty spectacular to see them operate. They hold quite a bit of fire retardant, and that operator is based here. Taxiways. We're on a taxiway right now, and we know that because the lines and the markings around the taxiway are yellow. Taxiways, all the signage and the markings are yellow, and that helps us determine where we're at on the airfield. I mean, it seems a little obvious, clear daylight today, but you can imagine really thick fog, maybe rain, and all we could see is a few hundred feet in front of us. We just see that yellow line. Helps out quite a bit to keep your orientation on the airfield. We'll be making a left turn here onto the main taxiway. Taxiways are lettered, and this particular one we're turning onto is Alpha. Usually the A taxiway runs parallel to the primary runway, in this case runway 24. So the taxiways are lettered, and runways are numbered, and the number on the runway corresponds to the first two digits of the magnetic heading that the airplane will be on as they take off. So each strip of concrete that's a runway is actually two runways, one going in each direction. It's still the same piece of concrete, but there's two numbers, reciprocal numbers for the runway, depending on which direction you're going. This 747 up on the left with the red tail, that airplane is being salvaged. All the engines are gone off of it. All the flight control surfaces are removed, and it's ready to be scrapped for metal. They actually come out with a backhoe and tear up the airframe and haul it off, melt it down, and make another airplane out of it. We're running our before takeoff checklist here, making sure that the airplane's configured for takeoff, that our flaps, those are the control surfaces on the trailing edges and leading edges of the wing, are configured for takeoff. Those increase the lift of the wing at low air speeds and help us to lift this 400,000 pounds off the ground. We do taxi pretty slow because this airplane does weigh a lot and has a lot of inertia. They seem maneuverable, and they are, But it's always wise to be very cautious when moving a large airplane like this around on the ground. Another interesting note, this short little taxi going out to the end of the runway here has taken about around 600-800 pounds of fuel just to move this short distance. These jet engines are very thirsty. They guzzle fuel like crazy. And moving this heavy weight takes a lot of fuel. And we have to take that into account for our fuel budget getting out to Honolulu today. Here's runway 24. So we'll be 240 degrees on the compass when we take the runway. Notice the runway markings are all in white. And 240 degrees is just south of west. 270 degrees is straight west. We're doing the rest of the before takeoff checklist, making sure our radar's on, that all our lights are operating and on, and we're noting our fuel load and throttling up the airplane now. We've been cleared for takeoff by air traffic control. And right about now we're going 80 knots, 80 nautical miles an hour. It's considered the high-speed part of the takeoff roll. And then pretty soon we'll be achieving what we call V1, which is the single-engine speed of the plane. If we lose an engine at this point, we can still take off and fly. And then we rotate, which means we rotate the nose gear off the ground. As soon as we increase the pitch of the airplane, it will leave the ground. And the call-out is positive rate, which means positive rate of ascent, and the other pilot calls for the landing gear up, and the plane becomes more aerodynamic and starts to accelerate. And we are in the LA basin here. It's very busy airspace. Not able to see a lot of the other airplanes around, but the Ontario airport, all of their arrivals, their approaches when they're landing west are flying right overhead from us, and they weave us out in between those arrivals. And we'll just be flying along here and climbing out. Over the LA basin, we'll be making a right-hand turn more northwesterly here pretty soon. Head towards the mountain range on the north side of the LA basin while we're climbing. We're leveling about 6,000 feet right here at this particular point. We'll be making a right turn. We're running our checklist, make sure our landing gear's up and locked. And as we accelerate, we retract our flaps, which decreases the lift on the wing, but as our speed increases, that increases lift. So the net effect is we're reducing drag on the airplane, and we're able to accelerate to higher speeds. And we are accelerating here about, at this point we're at about 250 nautical miles an hour, which is the airspeed that we travel in the traffic area, where a lot of other incoming and outgoing traffic is for other airports in this basin. And this is actually a very busy phase of the flight for the pilots. We're really on the alert for other aircraft in the area. Sometimes lighter private planes, general aviation aircraft aren't talking to air traffic control. They're on their own, and we have to keep an eye out for them to make sure that we don't interfere with their flight and they don't interfere with ours. Once we get above 18,000 feet, all the aircraft in the air above 18,000 feet are under positive control with air traffic control here over land in the United States. And so the air traffic controllers keep us from interfering with each other. We just follow their instructions, and they keep us from crossing paths too closely. Here we're headed straight north up over the ridge line north of San Bernardino, Ontario, California area. we'll be making a left-hand turn westerly, and they take us right over the higher terrain here on this particular departure. It's a really clear day, just some high stratiform clouds, remnants of some contrails up there. It's about all we're dealing with today. It's going to be a gorgeous day to fly. Looking across the ridgeline into Palmdale over there, and right now at about our 12 o'clock is the Edwards Air Force Base, up quite a bit north of us there, old dry lake bed that the Air Force does a lot of testing on their new aircraft. They landed the space shuttles there. It's got a very long runway. There's actually quite a bit of traffic coming down from Northern California here that they're weaving us through, both above and below our altitude. And it's quite an art form for air traffic control to move this traffic flowing both in and out of these airports around each other. Right now we're climbing above 10,000 feet and accelerating to about 290 knots, which is our climb out speed. And climbing up above the terrain here. Oftentimes the winds out of the west or the north here, and this can get a little bit choppy over this terrain. But they route us this way, again, for the air traffic flow in and out of the LA basin. And departing from the airport we did, this kind of keeps us out of the way of the other airplanes. Really spectacular views here on this clear day. Just off the screen slightly to our left is the Pacific Ocean, and you can see the shoreline out there to the left, just barely. We'll be going up, going coast out just south of Vandenberg Air Force Base, where they launch rockets off the west coast. Pretty soon we'll be entering the hypersonic phase of our flight. This is where I switch the video to time lapse, and it compresses the cruise portion of our flight. We're still climbing here. At some point we transition from, well, I'll talk about a couple of different transitions. Here we pass through, and here we are at the high Mach numbers of the flight. And we pass through 18,000 feet. We change our altimeters to standard barometric pressure. Our altitude is measured via barometric pressure. Here we are just cruising along over the Pacific at very high speeds. And this is fairly typical of the weather we see going over, and you can see we're starting to get a little bit of turbulence here, moving through some different air masses, kind of chasing the sun here. Beautiful part of the flight. Now we've made it to Honolulu, descended into the Honolulu area. We're on with the Honolulu Hawaiian Control Facility that's managing actually what is quite a bit of traffic in and out of the Hawaiian Islands. And we are still headed generally westbound. We'll be making a couple of right-hand 90-degree turns and flying over the southwest side of Oahu, lining up on runway 8 left is what we'll be landing on. We are referencing our instruments, but the weather's really good today, so this is a visual approach. And again, this weather's fairly typical. Weather in Honolulu is normally very stable. It's a big deal when the wind changes and they change a runway in Hawaii. It's just so stable and temperate there. we're running checklists and talking to air traffic control here, decelerating, and as we decelerate, we start extending our flaps in increments. The leading edge portions of the wing are called the slats, and they increase our lift without causing much drag, and they can handle a little bit higher speed. So typically the leading edge portion of our flaps, called the slats, come out first, and then just a little bit of the flaps on the trailing edge, a few degrees. And as we decelerate, the structures on the flaps can tolerate the wind, the relative wind, and if we were to extend them at our cruise speed, it would just tear them off the airplane. They're not built to handle that kind of speed and stress. So we're slowing and we're extending flaps and getting set up at our right altitude to approach our initial approach fix to descend down to the end of the runway. Again, just a gorgeous day. Oftentimes you can see boats and shipping traffic out on the water. It can be really distracting going in and out of these beautiful places like this, but the pilot does have to stay focused on the phase of flight, the airplane, fly the airplane, and not get too distracted with all this beauty. We're heading north now. At our 12 o'clock is Waianae, city of Waianae in Oahu. Interesting geological thing I learned about Oahu. The island currently, as it stands right now, is only a third of what the size it used to be. It used to be a huge crater volcano, most of it up to the north of where the island stands now, and 2/3 of the northern part of the island developed a crack and slid off into the ocean in ancient times. Science says that generated some pretty awesome tsunamis. And if you look Google Earth and it shows the seafloor there, you can see chunks of this island slid off onto the ocean floor up north. Okay, we're headed back eastbound. Like I said, we'll be landing on runway 080 degrees on the compass. 90 degrees is straight east. On our left there, the water you see inland, that's Pearl Harbor, and there's a harbor inlet we'll be flying right over. Airline I used to fly for here did a lot of inter-island flying, and we would come in from that airspace off to our right over the water and come right up the inlet to Pearl Harbor, which is very close to the end of the runway, as you'll be seeing. We make a hard right turn and just land very close and very tight. It was a pretty spectacular low altitude turn even for a light jet. But they give these bigger jets a little bit more time to maneuver and line up for our approach and stabilize. So we typically don't run real tight into the airport like that. We have longer legs where we can stabilize the aircraft in our approach. And if you look real sharp there's a dark patch of asphalt right at our 12 o'clock. That's our landing runway. The prominent feature out on the horizon there is Diamond Head, and Waikiki Beach is all along just on the other side of this airport. It almost looks like an island off to the south of the shoreline there to the right is actually the other east-west runway. They built up that area out there in the water, and that's the runway 8 right. There's a taxiway to get out there onto that, and That's typically the departure runway that we land off of, or that we take off from, excuse me. At this phase of flight, winds tend to change as you descend, and that alters your descent rate, so you have to adjust your power settings. Jet engines give you a lot of power, but it's not instantaneous. You have to really stay on top of your power settings and manage your airspeed on the way down. Don't want to go too fast for the flaps, as I mentioned, and also it will take excessive amount of runway if you land too fast. But you don't want to go too slow either, and the airspeed is fluctuating quite a bit because the winds relative to the airplane are changing here. Here's that inlet to Pearl Harbor I talked about before. And again, at our 12 o'clock, you can see runway 8 left, the white runway markings indicating that it's a runway. The piece of asphalt off to the right is a taxiway. We may be able to see the yellow markings on that. A lot of military aircraft off to the left. That's the Air Force Base part of the Honolulu Airport. The passenger terminal is off to the left. We'll be heading to the East Freight Terminal, so we'll be making a right-hand turn off of this runway after we land. We're calling out our altitudes here. For those of you that are fly light aircraft, this is a little different landing this kind of plane. Hold a little more power in and just arrest your descent. You never make a full stall landing in these swept wing airplanes. You fly it on essentially. As soon as our landing gear touched the ground, the spoilers, which are big control surfaces on top of the wing, extend and essentially negate all the lift off the wing, so the plane won't gust of wind come up and the plane go airborne again, and also helps us decelerate quite a bit. Those spoilers will remain up until we turn off the runway and stow them. As soon as we turn off the runway here, right now we're watching for other aircraft. We are taxiing across intersecting runways right here. There's a north-south runway that we cross. We want to make sure that no other airplanes landing on that runway. Air traffic control does a great job of managing all of that. But accidents do occur, so we have to stay vigilant. Here is that runway, that crossing runway. As soon as we do make our right-hand turn, first officer will be raising the flaps up, stowing our spoilers, starting our auxiliary power unit, which is another little jet engine in the tail of the plane that just gives us hydraulic power, electric power, and pneumatic power to do ground handling. There is some general aviation aircraft and other freighters off here to our left. Some inter-island. See all of our cargo containers all scattered out here. The lines that we're crossing here delineate the runway from the taxiway. The solid parts of those double lines indicate that we're on the taxiway side, on the ground side. The dashed lines we just crossed over indicate the air side of that line, which is the runway side. And you can see that little golf cart zipping along off to our left. That's our mechanic that meets us here in Hawaii. Meets the plane, makes sure that everything's okay maintenance-wise. They have to do more extensive inspections and maintenance on the planes when they travel over the water. The acronym for that's ETOPS, which is a whole nother discussion. Some of you passengers will see ETOPS painted on the nose of an airplane. That means that airplane's been certified to fly long distances over the ocean. You see a lot of cargo containers lined up to the left there, another freighter aircraft off to our left. control tower off to the right there has a pretty good view of the whole field. It's a pretty expansive field here in Honolulu. Lots of traffic in and out of here. And we'll be making a hard left turn. And there's marshallers, one on each side of the airplane, monitoring our wingtips to make sure that we don't strike any of the things on the ground. Then there'll be a marshaller right at the nose of the plane, indicating how we're to taxi in, keeping us lined up in our position as we move into the parking spot here. There's the outbound freight for the belly, all lined up there on the right, and the upper deck freight is larger containers right ahead of us here. You can see the marshaller there waving his wands. That indicates continue to move, taxi in. There's a little golf cart on the left with our mechanic talking to one of the ground people. The two guys left and right are going to put the chocks on the nose gear to chock our wheels in. And our marshaller, when he crosses his wands, means that we're to set our brakes, to stop and set our brakes. That concludes our flight. Hope you enjoy your stay here in Honolulu.